Hi again. This video is me explaining what went on when we were preparing the house for Paul's homecoming and all the challenges that we endured along with this. Everything ended up being okay, but during the process, it seemed like everything was against us. Some of the things that I decided to do were things that I didn't tell Paul about because I wanted to surprise him. And so when events happened that kind of set me back on my heels, I couldn't explain to Paul why I was so upset. So I'm going to tell you the story. So if you watched a previous video, you knew that I did go to the hospital to be with Paul for 1 week when he was getting his stem cells infused and the week following that. And I would have stayed longer, but I did need to get the house ready for him when he was coming home. So I came back on a Tuesday, I think, or a Wednesday. And when I came back, I started right in getting some things done. The first thing I did was to take one of our cars in to the dealership to get the vents cleaned out and also to have the car detailed. Our cars had not really been detailed, I don't think ever, and it's very important that a post-transplant patient has a super clean environment. So I wanted the vents cleaned out so Paul wasn't breathing in any molds that might be lurking in the vent system. You know that kind of smell when you first turn on your car and you turn on the air conditioner and it smells kind of icky, like mildewy? I don't know if everyone else notices that, but I do. So I wanted that cleaned and sanitized, and then I wanted the whole car detailed inside and out so the cushions were clean, and we had a lot of dog hair in both cars from Leo. So took the car in, got it detailed, and that took a couple of days, but it didn't matter, I had the other car. So that was the first thing. Then I also, during that week, got a quote for the little area of carpeting on our back porch. Our back porch it's too small to be used as a room. It's really only about 5 feet by 8 feet or 5 feet by 10 feet, something like that. I guess maybe it's more like 12 feet. And we have shelves in there, and it's just an access going in and out of the back door to get into the backyard. And Leo, that's where Leo goes in and out most of the time, so he can go in the backyard. And the carpeting hadn't been cleaned in a long time, so it was a bit of a mess. So I wanted to get that carpeting all taken up and a new one laid down. Now, I will say this, normally they don't really want you doing anything major, no construction and all that. But I felt like this carpeting, it was torn up and stained and kind of beyond redemption, and I thought it would be better to get it done and then we would let everything settle. And since it was a small area, I wasn't worried about it, nor was it an area that Paul was going to be sitting in for any length of time. He just uses the area to go in and out of the house so he can go in the backyard, and that's that. The Friday after I came home from the hospital, my son and his fiance came over to help me clean out the basement, and that was a big job. And it took us 2 different days to complete the job, and frankly, it's still not completely done, but it's tons better than it used to be. So that's what we did on that Friday. And during that time, the carpenter came by to take a look at some little projects that I had talked to him probably the week before about coming to fix up for us. So he came by and took a look at what I wanted done carpentry-wise. And then over that weekend, that was the weekend when Julie came and helped me sort through my cosmetics. And then I packed up a suitcase of clean clothes for Paul and some water and some snacks and brought it down to the hospital for him. But I was not allowed to see him that day because they were all worried about the COVID. So I basically met the nurse at the door of the parking lot and handed her the suitcase, and that was it. With the carpenter coming, I had some work I needed to do with finishing the pieces of wood, molding mainly for the windows with stain and polyurethane. So I spent the weekend doing that. And it was on this weekend that Leo had his little mishap. I had brought him to the local doggy daycare on Sunday, and this was Memorial Day weekend, Sunday. And I was spending all day working on the woodwork and getting things ready for the carpenter. And I got a call from the doggy daycare lady telling me that Leo had gotten wounded, and it was something when the dogs were all leaving, and Leo doesn't like his friends to leave, so he barks at the other dog's feet, and apparently he startled one of them, and the dog grasped onto his neck and kind of, took a chunk out, or I don't know, or just opened up. It was really gross. So I had to take him to the the animal emergency care. And this was not fun because I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And of course, it was deeper than I anticipated. They had to put staples in. He was going to need some antibiotics. And he was supposed to go down to the board and train place that he was going to be staying at and training while I was doing all the cleaning and for those first few weeks when Paul came back. And it was out of the question. I was not going to send him there with this gaping wound and all these antibiotics. So I had to rearrange with the board and train place to bring him the following week around the time when Paul was going to come home. So that really threw a monkey wrench in all my best laid plans. Not that I mind having Leo around, it's just when you're having a crew of people or an individual and you have a young, rambunctious dog running around wanting to check out, a dog who loves people and wants to hang out with everyone who comes over, it became difficult. So that was kind of a bad night for me. I got him home, got him settled, and I was just like, why? Thinking about the week coming up and everything that I had scheduled in, but we made it work. The Monday after Leo's mishap was Memorial Day, and thankfully the carpenter was willing to come and work that day. So he spent all day putting woodwork around the 3 remaining windows that Paul had not been able to get to. He also put a handrail going down our basement stairs and fixed some wood. It's too hard to go into. There was a couple of pieces of wood that needed to be attached there. And then there was a little bit of kitchen molding, baseboard molding that needed to be put up, and he took care of that. So that was great, and I was really glad he was able to finish it in one day. And what I did with Leo that day, we just kind of hung out in various parts of the house where the carpenter wasn't. So that wasn't too stressful that day. The following Tuesday, however, was a different story, because this was the day when the big cleaning crew was coming to basically clean the house from top to bottom. And they were going to do everything. They were going to wash the walls, woodwork. They were going to wash the windows, do a general overall cleaning, dusting, vacuuming, carpet cleaning. They were going to do everything, and they were also going to take care of getting the vents cleaned out, because I wanted all the air ducts to be cleaned out in the house, because I didn't want any dust or mold circulating throughout the house. This also happened to be a scorching hot day. So what happened was, since they were all over the house, Leo and I pretty much had to hang out in the backyard. We do have some shade trees and we have a patio umbrella, but it was really hot and awful. And after a while, Leo was looking a little stressed and panting, so I had to bring him into the basement and make him stay in his crate and just cool down and be in the shade and in the cool basement. And so that was kind of a really long day. But thankfully, the cleaners were able to get everything done in one day. So that was kind of magical, and I was really happy about that. Once the cleaning was done, though, I did want to confine Leo to a smaller portion of the house. I didn't want Leo dropping fur and dragging muddy paws into these nice clean spaces that I got ready for Paul post-transplant. So Leo stayed in the kitchen and the basement and the backyard. And our backyard is pretty large, so he had plenty of room to run around. I think he was wondering why I wasn't letting him into the sitting room where he usually comes in the evening. And now that Paul is doing better and getting close to day 100, when Leo comes home, he's going to be allowed into the sitting room again. It was just when everything was spotless and totally clean and ready for a fresh post-transplant patient. I didn't want to drag in any yard dirt or poop or fur into the clean spaces. So we stayed put in those spaces. And Wednesday was a day off, which was great. I think I did a little more sorting and organizing and just kind of hung out with Leo. And then Thursday was the day that the painters were coming. This was another surprise. The back porch carpeting and the painting of this one room, those were surprises for Paul. In our sitting room where we watch TV, the paint was stained and the walls were cracked, and we had this old border that was very outdated even for a Victorian house. And I just thought it would be nice to have a fresh, clean paint job there. So they came over, and this day was semi-rainy, 100% humidity, it felt like, and hot. And again, we were confined, and this time, because it was raining out a lot of the day, Leo and I were confined to the kitchen and the basement while the painters did their work. And they didn't really want the air conditioner on because it would blow the plastic sheeting around, and they also wanted it to be warm so the paint would dry, because they were trying to get this done in one day as well. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the painter came to me and said, I don't know if we're gonna get it done by today. I'm like, oh, okay. But thankfully they did, so that was all done. Then on Friday, Robert and his fiance and my daughter Julie came over to finish up the basement cleaning job. So we were doing that, and while we were doing that, the drapery people had called and said they could come put the drapes in. So what we needed the drapers for was, we had converted our front parlor. We live in a Victorian house, so there's a front parlor and a second parlor. So the sitting room is where we watch TV. That's the second parlor. The first parlor is where I keep my harp, and we have our fireplace in there. It's kind of our fancy company room. But we converted that into sort of a hospital room for Paul. We got a new bed that was adjustable. We had all his medical supplies in there, and a chest of drawers for his clothing. But what we didn't have in there were proper draperies on the front window. I just had lace curtains, but you can see through them. So we got some proper draperies in, and we also had them make a curtain to go across the doorway of the parlor to give Paul a little privacy. And this was so if he was resting, he could draw that curtain across the parlor door, and it's not like a real door, but it cut out the light and some of the sound and just gave him privacy. So they were there to do that. So all that was going on Friday. And then we had a nice dinner together because Robert and his fiance then were returning to Philadelphia finally. They had been here for a couple months from when COVID broke out. They felt safer being away from the Philadelphia area because it was so close to New York where so many cases were. So they came back and they stayed with his fiance's mom. And then I would see Robert periodically, and then he came over those 2 times to help me clean the basement. So that was all done there, and that was great to get all that done. And then Saturday was the day when the carpeting man came, and he put in the carpeting on the back porch. And that looked really nice, and I was really happy that he was able to come out then. There was a little mix-up with the date of the carpet installation, but it all worked out okay, so thank God for that. And then finally it came around to the Tuesday when Paul was going to come home. We weren't exactly sure when Paul was coming home, and in fact the hospital kind of gave me a heart attack. This one nurse practitioner called me on Friday and said, oh, he can come home. And at this time he was still receiving blood transfusions. His platelet count was terrible. He was tired. He was having blood pressure problems. And I basically wanted to say, are you out of your freaking mind? And I kind of said that, but in a more polite way. but brought up the medical reasons why I didn't think he should come home that weekend. That was a little crazy, and that really annoyed me because it was like unnecessary stress and anxiety. He was in no way, shape, or form ready to come home that weekend. So they finally decided that Tuesday would be the day he could come home. And that happened to be the day that I was going to bring Leo down to See Spot Run for his board and train. So Tuesday was a crazy manic day. I brought Leo to the vet in the morning because he was supposed to have his staples out. The vet found out that it hadn't healed. And I'm like, no! But she did say that she would talk to the caretakers at See Spot Run and see if they would be comfortable with applying ointment to his neck while they cared for him. And so she spoke with the owner, and the owner is great, and she said that that would be fine. So packed up Leo, all his food, all his medicines, written instructions, and brought him down to the place. And so that worked fine. And before I went to get Paul, I had this appointment, a live appointment, which I really needed to go to because it was a doctor that's hard to get into, and it was an appointment I was putting off. And I told Paul, I was like, do you mind if I run to this appointment and I'll come straight down after the appointment and get you? And he was like, that's fine. So did that. Thank God she was on time. And then I headed down, picked up Paul, and then he came home. And the first thing he did was pretty much crash in bed and rest. But after a little while, he got up, and I did show him some of the things that we had done in the house. He was so exhausted, it was hard for him to appreciate it at first. But I think now that it's all done, I think he's really glad because he likes the way it looks. And although he likes doing the woodwork projects himself, he's not going to be able to do woodwork for pretty much a year. And so all these little tasks were done that he didn't have to worry about. So that was really nice for him. So it was crazy and awful, and the added complication of Leo's injury and having Leo bouncing around when I was expecting to be alone to be able to handle all these repairs and manage all this stuff. It was a big challenge and a big stress, and I'm not really sure why that was thrown into the mix. I often ask myself lately, why are these things happening? Like Leo's injury and Paul's melanoma and all this crazy stuff. It's like, is this necessary? Come on. I mean, but anyway, can't do anything about it, but move forward and do what you can do. So that was my crazy cleaning story. I probably did a lot more than I needed to or should have, but I'm really glad it's all done because it's stuff that I don't have to nag Paul about. I can't nag him anyway because he can't do it, but it's stuff that's done. It's really nice and beautiful having the woodwork on the windows and the nice fresh carpeting on the back porch and the nice fresh painted room in the sitting room that we sit in every night because Paul and I really don't go anywhere. He can't, I don't really want to. And of course, lately there's nowhere you can go anyway because of this stupid lockdown. So we sit in our sitting room each night and we watch a series, preferably a long-lasting one, so we have an episode every night. And sit in our pretty room and just enjoy each other's company until Paul is tired and ready for bed. And that's kind of our days. Being home with a post-transplant, post-chemotherapy patient, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's okay. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I'm glad to be here, glad to go through this journey with him, as painful as it is to watch someone you love. And I'm just happy that I can do my part besides caring for him, managing the house, all the stuff that needs to be done, little things that he used to do, like the garbage and recycling and changing the light bulbs and all this kind of stuff. I don't really care to do it, but I will, and because I want him to get well, and I don't want him to have to stress and think about all this kind of stuff. So with all that in mind, I'm really glad I went through all that sweat and tears of doing a bang-up job on the house. So, if I do say so myself. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.